Immersed in knitting every day.
Yeah, every day.
Welcome to a special episode of Crimson Stitchery on the road. Today I'm in the studio of Sarah Shepherd, a hand knit designer and costume knitter.
Yeah.
So Sarah, you're a professional knitter.
Yeah, I am.
You have a background in costume and costume making.
Yeah,
right?
So I started in, it was textiles really, textile art and costume. I got my first job in Lord of the Rings in the dye room, dyeing brown trousers, various shades of orc trousers, so it was like brown.
That was your first job?
Yeah.
How amazing! Your first job was working on orc trousers.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So a lowly dyer in the dye room. And then in that job we did lots of fun stuff and explored textiles more. I'd done some dyeing and oh gosh, I've been obsessed with making clothes since I was little. Before that, and I'd worked for a fashion designer here in London before that as well. So I kind of had all these different skills coming into it. But once I got into that dye room, I loved it. And I loved the textile part of it. I went on and did pattern cutting. I did all various things within the costume world. And then I found myself just getting more and more sort of focused on the textiles. And I ended up working on various projects and doing everything from felting, printing, dyeing, painting, a full range of textile arts.
And was this all in performance and film?
Yeah, a lot of it. There was a little bit in kind of theatre, ballet, that kind of thing. But most of it was in film and that world. And then I started travelling a lot with it. And I worked in Australia, I worked over here, I worked in Europe and then in New Zealand. And it was, mostly the lead textile artist on various films, yeah.
So how did you make that transition from dye room and kind of like fabric creation and texture and all of that stuff and into knitting?
Yeah, so I was on a break. I'd finished a job in the Czech Republic actually, and I came back to London and Ravelry was just starting up, and I just had this idea in my head. I wanted a laced work fronted panelled like kind of baby doll top style thing.
Yeah, very like 2008.
So it was 2007 and I thought I'd publish this pattern and on Ravelry, and it was sage remedy top, and I kind of figured out how you write a pattern and did my best, and I had pattern making and all that knowledge, and then I sort of improvised and I sold this pattern, and then I ended up selling thousands of this pattern. I could not believe it, and I was just like, oh, okay, so people want knitwear patterns. And then I was in the film industry and I was travelling a lot, and I just sort of set it to one side, and I'd always knit, but then I started doing knitting in costume. I worked in the concept stage of The Hobbit, and I did a whole lot of knitting for that, and realised that there was kind of people quite interested in seeing knitting on screen, and thought, oh, this could be something. And then in amongst that time I had children and I wasn't going to travel anymore, and so I thought, I'm just going to do knitting, I'm just going to focus on that. So I kind of potted around, and then a couple of years back I thought, right, let's see if I can make go of this, and I started up doing knitwear design for hand knit patterns, and did that for a year or so, and then I started talking to my film contacts and said, is there a demand for a knit, person who specialises in knit? And they were like, well, it's kind of unusual, but I think so. And then from two contacts I didn't even contact. Like the first one, she just rang me and said, I've got a story and it's about these nuns and they knit, and their habits have to be knitted. And she was like, I can't think of anyone who's more suited to helping me create these costumes that have to be knitted. So I did that, and I designed all the designs, and then we sent I sent my patterns off to Australia, and they had knitters in Australia who actually made the habits, and that was Lambs of God, which is out in Australia at the moment. And then I got another job. Just off the back of that, another person rang me and said, knitting, I need it. I'm doing something about Alaska. This needs to happen with knitwear, and I want to be able to customise that knitwear. So, and then since then I've just kept getting work, which is great.
That's fantastic.
So it's been really fun to be able to combine my costume kind of background and skills with my knitting skills and knitting love.
It's interesting because when we think about what it would mean to, be a professional knitter, it often leads you into on the one hand into the fashion industry, and then on the other hand you've got the other side of things where it's like textile art and people creating, you know, sculpture or installation art or kind of immersive work. But of course it makes complete sense that there is a demand for knitting in costume because it's so particular. And also I imagine that a lot of historical examples of knitwear don't survive because of their fragile nature, you know, they degrade, there's moths. I do remember seeing a stage play once where, very strangely, instead of having stage costumes made, they were wearing vintage clothing. There was sort of this period where they were wearing vintage to, you know, sing and dance and perform musicals in, which is like such a bad idea because, you know, costume needs to be constructed for performance because it's worn in a certain way. But the point is that they were all wearing original vintage, like 1940s Shetland hand-knitted 100% wool jumpers on stage, complete with authentic sweat stains and
nice.
But it's so interesting that, you know, you sort of brought together your professional background together with a kind of almost like chance or unexpected success through Ravelry, and actually all of the connections were made.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's often these things kind of tick-tock and you think you're going this direction and you end up going this, and then you're bringing in something that you did before. And I can't say I completely planned where I've ended up, but it all has seemed to fit in quite well. And actually now that I'm here and sort of doing more work for costume, the more people I talk to, the more they're saying the skills, those knitting skills, were the people that the technicians that they've had were much older, and and people aren't necessarily coming through because they don't see this as an industry. They don't see there's a place for those skills in a professional context, and so they said specialisation in costume is actually quite important, and it's quite good that those skills are being kept and that we still have that I'm still carrying on and bringing those back. But weirdly, I feel like the knitting industry is massive, and there's so much going on, and there's so many interesting things happening, and it's really pushing itself, but it's not necessarily doing it in a professional context. It's doing it in that hobby world or that private world, whereas kind of when I go into the costume, they're like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And I was like, well, I could show you about 10 knitters that I know, you know, in Hackney that could do the same thing, you know, but those worlds aren't necessarily connected.
So you're still working between the two worlds, doing the designing for hand knit and kind of individual craft, and then you're doing the professional knitting for costume and performance, etc. What do you find are the main differences between those two worlds and how you work between them?
Time.
Money.
So the film world, they've got lots of money, they've got no time. But then actually sometimes you can get people that have got no money and no time.
I've heard of them.
Got that.
Just heard of them.
So you kind of want to find the ones that lots of money and no time. No time's not great. But so I'm trying to work on trying to speed up my processes by doing things slightly differently, and there's a lot of problem solving and becoming professional with your hobby. And so that's one of the issues I do have to face, is that often people do want to have a 6-week turnaround, and that will be from very conception through to the finished product with multiples. So, you know, you've got...
So 6 weeks, this is for a film project?
Yeah, sometimes you've
been given the brief, the sketches, whatever.
Yeah.
You're told about the colours, the materials, you've got to produce it, do samples, do 12s
Yeah, but I've had a week and a half to produce a sweater, which was an 1890s sweater with big sleeves, like nothing I've ever done before, and I had a week and a half to turn it around.
Those leg of mutton sleeves?
Yeah. And you think, it's pretty amazing what you can do in a week and a half.
That's a week and a half worth of knitting just on one shoulder pad.
Well, not when you've got a lovely machine like that.
Yes, you've got a handy helper here.
Thank you, brother. My handy helper. So you do have to know how to make it quick, and you have to think fast, and you also have to deal with stress levels, you know, which generally with my knitting, my hand knitting at home and the hand knitting world, you take stress out of the equation. That's part of it. You sit down, you knit, and everything disappears, and it does for me anyway. I'm sure not everyone that happens, but it's very kind of therapeutic, whereas when you're doing it professionally, there is a level of stress involved. Everything has to happen yesterday, and you know, you might not get the actor for a week and a half before it's on set and all that kind of thing.
So actually, for hand knitting, you have designed for some quite major publications, haven't you? Like recently, you've designed for Brooklyn Tweed.
Yeah, which was fun. That was a bit of a dream of mine. I've always thought, yeah, I'd like to be part of wool people.
Now you're a wool person.
A wool person, which is really exciting. And then I had something in Pom Pom. I have had Twist Collective. I've got one coming out with Interweave in September.
In September, yeah.
There's a release, and so yeah, I'm quite pleased that that's been quite fun, because it's quite good. Often you can design, independent design, and self-publishing is great, but if you work with other people, you realise there's other ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And it's great to learn those other ways and improve your game.
So within your personal and your costume knitting, what kind of briefs are you given? Are you given like a kind of sketch, or are you given like, you know, do you ever have to interpret like historical examples of knitting?
Yeah, a lot of historical, even if it's not from the period, it might be a photo that someone's got of a moment and this sort of feeling, and that'll be enough to sort of start the process of designing. Like we're talking about before, that character building. So often you'll get mood boards, and they'll have a character, so that might be a whole lot of colours, or it might be a whole lot of images that express emotions, or it might be images of texture and pattern, and it depends on the design you work with, whether you get those or not. And then you start off with your mood boards, and then in that I would then say, right, I could do this, this and this, and then I might give back knitting references, and then I will translate them into swatches. So then we'll just have a sort of swatch fest. There's quite a lot of swatches go back and forth.
Yeah.
And they see what can be done, and what kind of yarns, what kind of play you can get, what kind of customization we can get, what kind of stories we can put into the fabrics. And that's usually the design process. When it's me on my own, it's all kinds of things. Like I'll be walking down the street and I'll just like the way that the light catches the window. And then I'll look at that and I'll play around. Or it might be some stitch patterns, I like the way they work together. And it might be that I take that stitch pattern and then simplify it, or try and play with the part of a design I really like, and do some swatches by hand. And so it really depends. With me, it's more, I would say I'm more of a play-focused person, that I don't necessarily have a mood board or a sort of formulaic way of approaching design. But when I work professionally, it's generally you get a mood board, you do swatches, you go back and forth, and then there's a design development through that, and then there's a colour sort of development, and then you've got the other factor of then the costume designer will talk to the director, and then the costume designer will talk to the art director, and then there's a combination of those opinions, and then it's a real team thing, which makes it quite fun.
So in terms of hand knitting, it's often said that it's quite a winter focused industry, with the big peaks happening, you know, in the autumn and you know, around Christmas and so on, and sort of slow seasons in the summer. Do you find that affects the way that you work and design at all?
Well, I remember last summer being very, very hot in here with all this wool surrounding me and mohair. It was disgusting.
Last summer when it was like 35 degrees
I wish
day.
It was quiet in summer. Yeah, it was disgusting. So I'm quite glad. I hate to say that, but I'm quite glad for a little bit of a wetter, colder summer this year. But generally, I notice it with pattern sales. I mean, I've got a few lighter tops that sell better in spring, summer. And then you just notice that sort of at September, October, everyone's starting to get ready for this winter, so that's when everything kind of gets going again. So definitely there's a life to that. But with film and costume, there's not really a season for it. It's really when they get the money. And I mean, they shot a film that I recently worked on in the heat of LA, and they put fake snow.
Okay.
Around. So it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. So this is a wonderful, you know, seasonless world in which you can create any climate you want and the appropriate knitwear for it, totally. Along with Mr. Brother over here. So what you've told me about both your employment history, but also your kind of recent projects and the way that you've worked, it sounds like the film industry is really quite international. Yeah,
well, maybe it's that I travelled a lot, so I've got contacts, not just in the UK. In fact, more Australasia and America. Those probably where my contacts lie more. But it is, and when you work on a job, you'll have people from all over the world working on that job generally.
But I've also found that about knitwear in general, because the way that like motifs and styles and techniques in knitting, you know, they've really travelled all around the world and been interpreted differently by different cultures. So it's quite interesting that that is still reflected actually in the practice, in your practice today, you know, because I mean the whole thing about knitting, you know, someone would wear something, they'd go somewhere else, or maybe they would be trading, and they, you know, they would like motifs, so it's like people were trading goods, but they're also trading ideas and shapes and colours. And
with the Silk Roads, it's been going on for, you know, such a long time. You know, that trading, that movement, those ideas, those getting excited by someone else's ideas and passing those things on, and you can really see it in knitwear, and you can see those. Like when you do research and you're going, oh, this is something that's happening in Norway, and you're like, oh gosh, it's over here in Alaska. You know, how did that happen? And and back then, how did it happen? And you realise that movement was happening, and those people were being inspired by the cultures and taking their own. There was a twist on it. It would go somewhere slightly differently. And I find that really interesting when you are doing historical work, when you start looking. Like at the moment I'm looking at Renaissance knitting, and
amazing!
It's really fun. What I found really interesting about that was there was this idea that these particular garments that are at the V&A, they're these what they call waistcoats, and they're these silk waistcoats, and they're knit, and they're they call them damask, and they were trying to emulate what was happening in woven fabric, where you've got these beautiful damasks, but they wanted to do it with knitting, so they used silk, and they had long floats at the back, and you got these beautiful patterns, and they used colour work, but also they did purl stitches to kind of add texture. And I was looking at these, and you kind of go, oh, that looks very Italian. And initially they called them the Florentine jackets, and they were like, yeah, they're from Italy. But actually there's a lot of questions around that, because it seems that they were probably being made here in England.
So it's the value of the made in Italy, you know, the glamour, the romance.
And that's probably all the money was then, and a lot of what was happening. Maybe those things being sent and traded. But actually a lot of them, you know, they're probably being designed and built here. Or in... they've got other examples in Norway and through Scandinavia as well. So
lots of examples there. But it's just so interesting, because actually, there's always been so much innovation in textiles and hand knitting, so much creativity. But B, those networks of knowledge exchange and those transnational communication networks didn't just start with the invention of the internet. Actually, they've been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's something that I find really very rich and pertinent also in hand knitting, is that it's completely transnational. Like people are just communicating from anywhere in the world, exchanging ideas, to the point where I'm even wondering if there is like unique styles according to certain places so much anymore.
But I think there is still a kind of a buzz when you're on the ground, when you're in those places. It's kind of special to a place.
There is something about it being physical and tangible at the end of the day. How many knitting machines have you got?
Okay, I've got 3 at the moment, and I'm currently eyeing one up on eBay, so that'll be number 4.
Do they do different things?
They do. So this one over here is my fine knitting machine. This one's my standard, and then I've got a bulkier weight one. And I don't actually use as much. I guess because I just go hand knitting. And then the one that I'm looking at is more automated, more programmable. It's a PASAP, and it's kind of more electronic. And
the machines are coming. The androids are being brought in.
It's taking over. My studio is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
So what's that you've got there?
So this is the punch card. And on here you can see the pattern. So each one of those holes tells the machine to push a needle out or in. And if it's in a different part of this bed, if the needle's pushed to a certain point in the bed, it'll pick up, when I've got 2 threads through here, it'll pick up a different colour. So every one of these holes, you can see there's a cross, dot and cross there.
The
crosses are there. And then this is what I'm going to put in. And you can see this crazy sort of pop art pattern that I've drawn on here with all the holes. That makes this one here.
So did you draw out that pattern onto the punch card?
Yeah, that's right. So I drew out the pattern and made sure that it kind of all worked in terms of repeat. So you've got a certain amount of, so every time these need to repeat after each other, else you get a jagged line. I don't know if you can see that on there, that there's an actual repeat in there. So you draw it out, making sure the repeat works, and also that repeat works from the top to the bottom as well. And then, and you've got a little punch, I'll show you those pretty cute actually. with a puncher. So you've got one of these, and it makes the holes in here.
So it punches out the pattern that you
Punches
need.
out the pattern, so that it doesn't come like, you can buy them already done, but I often, because of the type of work I do, which is all over the place and different all the time, and people want to customise things, I'm often making punch cards. So I do this a lot. So I just live in this domestic machine. This is a domestic machine. They don't make these kind anymore. It's an old brother.
When was the machine made, do you know?
I don't know. I think this might be a 70s, but maybe 60s. I'm not sure.
It's got that 70s avocado green.
I know, it's lovely.
And peach.
It's funny, you become quite close to your machine.
Definitely.
Okay. So you're looking at the back of the book.
Okay. And it's just growing inside there.
Yeah, so we've got it. Yeah, you can see I've done probably about 8 centimetres.
Wow.
It was quite quick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a little bit different to hand knitting.
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
This is why I started machine knitting.
Okay. Do you have to have separate machines for all the finishing and joining and stuff?
Yeah, so I've got a linker which links them up, and that's hiding down the bottom here. That's a machine for seaming up the sides. You can also do it by hand. And actually, I'm still doing it by hand on many garments because depending on the finish you want, it still gives you that flexibility. So knowing how to do things by hand makes a huge difference, because often, I think that's the great thing about machine knitting and hand knitting, and having both the skills for costume, because you often want the personality of your hand knitting, and you want some of the finishing and the touches that you can get when you're hand knitting, but then you need the speed. So having them both sitting alongside each other is really helpful for myself as a technician and knitwear designer, and for the costume designer who's got to make budgets and all those things. And
our favourite thing, budgets.
Yeah, budgets, time and money budgets, both can be quite restrictive when it comes to knitting. So. Okay, so this is it coming off the machine.
And this is what you've just produced.
Yeah, in
like 1 minute. In 1 minute.
Totally magic. So this is like an op art kind of design, and it would be not impossible but very slow to work with by hand.
It's absolutely beautiful, and the tension has come out completely perfect and
Exactly.
flat. And also on the back, like looking at those floats, it's kind of just as beautiful from the back as from the front.
Absolutely.
Actually. And like the amount of skill that it would take to be able to hand knit that flat. That's beautiful, and you can just use the punch card to sketch in
anything you want, really. You've got some restrictions, but even like you would like if the floats are too long, you get sort of strange things happening. But to be honest, you can even work with that. Like there's actually loads of possibilities with these machines, because there's so much you can customise and you can play around with, you can tinker with. So you can get lots of good story material.
And then these are some of your other swatches from. Is that from the same project?
So the same project, yeah.
I love the colours; they're so bold.
Yeah,
Plain but bold.
And actually, she used squid ink to do some of these, or some natural dyes to do these.
Squid ink?
Yeah. It's not bad, isn't it?
Wow. So what are these going to be turned into?
They're going to be turned into balaclavas. They're a woman who's an artist, Madeline Pledge, who's does replication work. So she uses other people's art, and then she replicates it and then puts her own kind of twist on it. And she's commissioned me to make them up according to the photos I've got of the original artist's work. So it's quite an unusual project, and it's really nice because it's very defined. Usually I've got these really open briefs that can be a bit crazy, whereas this is quite defined what I have to do, so I'm quite enjoying it.
So you're working across such a huge range of projects across film and cross artist work and cross hand knitting.
Yeah, and I do exhibitions. I've just finished an exhibition for 1920s knitwear, and it was very fine. So we used Dubier, which is an industrial machine, to do that, a lot of that work. We also used my fine knitting machine as well, and then do TV work, and then I'm doing my hand knitting, which I sell inside as well.
Yeah,
but it's all just to keep the studio running. Like I figure the more like kind of strings I have, the more you can, because with freelance work you're kind of on and then you're off and you're on and you're off, and then it means I can kind of fill the year with my different projects, and it's working really well so far. So, but
all of that variety is really what's making it such an interesting and vibrant career, because it's like, it's so different from, you know, the image that you have of a knitter, which is someone that's like indoors on their own all the time kind of producing stuff, but actually you're constantly communicating with these different designers and artists and artistic directors, and
and you get and doing that you get so many different ways of approaching a problem, like and also people will look at something so differently from you, and often if you are kind of working with your brief and your ideas, I've over the years learned so much from when a designer comes in and says, no, what about this, and you're just like, never would have in a million years gone that way, because I didn't even think that existed, or didn't even look at things that way. And so it is really interesting in terms of design, but also just in terms of technical. You get pushed in your technical, you know, and things that you could do or might do, because they'd show something I don't know, but maybe I could try it. And
but that's a really great point that you've raised, because I think when people talk about artistic collaborations, there's this assumption that, you know, the collaboration is between like the stylist and the designer, or the producer and the director, and so on and so forth. But actually there's such in-depth collaborations that happen across different technicians with, like you said, technical skills, and there's ways to really, really push and increase knowledge, you know, within like a subfield, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's as a technician, you're the one that kind of is actualizing an idea or concept, and in doing that, there's also you have your restrictions, but in those restrictions there's also all these possibilities that you could say, well, I know that it could do this. How about we could take what you're saying there, and we could use some of the like the properties of wool or the properties of chenille or silk, and maybe we could take it here. And so there is a two-way between, because sometimes I act as more of a designer, and that I'm more saying this is how it should look, and other times I'm more of a technician. And I think being able to sort of realise that is a two-way street, that a technician doesn't just respond by giving exactly...
Yeah, I would say so. And also in the past, when I used to be a costume maker, I found that as well. Like, there was so much contribution that you could make on a technical level, you know, as the tailor, or even as the, you know, person carrying out an alteration, because the smallest thing about a piece of cloth or a garment can actually speak such volumes about the wearer. You know, the shape of the pocket, the type of button that went on, you know, why is it this shape and not this shape? Oh, all of the buttons are the perfect size because he's gone to the best tailor and bought the right size, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And that's the cool thing, actually. That's a really good point, because that's one of the reasons I love costume, and is that it's different to design for, you know, commercial purposes or for selling patterns and all those things. That you're telling a story, and we as wearers, it's something that you know about as well, we tell stories with what we wear, and it's really wonderful as a costumier or costume designer to like understand when you're looking at people what you're seeing, and what assumptions you have, but what the world assumes, and also what, as a wearer, what you're pushing out to the world, what you're telling the world about when you wear something, what you're telling the world. And that's you, as a costume designer, you're playing on that somewhere with the colour you like. Like, there's such wonderful stories about what colour can make us feel and do, and it's so powerful, and we often just ignore it completely. But we are constantly communicating through colour, through texture, through the quality of your yarn. And I don't mean that like whether it's expensive yarn or cheap yarn, but if it's a fluffy yarn, if it's got a personality to it, if it's very smooth, if it's very refined.
That's a really great point, because knitting, and particularly knitted textiles, you know, the wearing of knitted textiles and the creation of them is a completely haptic experience. It's a sensory, full body experience in the creation and also upon the wearing. And when we put knitted textiles on our skin, that influences how we behave, because it's coming into direct contact, and, you know, it's 3D, and it stretches, and it behaves sometimes in a really unpredictable way, you know, in comparison to woven textiles, or, you know, other form of textile art and creation, like embroidery, surface decoration, and so on. I feel like knitting there's something very, very particular about it. But also, everything that you were saying, you know, I feel like when we're working in performance and design, everybody's very in touch with the storytelling side of things. But actually going into research, which is what I'm doing now, sometimes in archives you find the tiniest, archaeological fragments, and you have to reconstruct these whole life stories about cultures based on something very small, and obviously, outside research as well. But it's really quite amazing, how much storytelling goes into like one fibre, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's so exciting. Kind of being involved in that detail and kind of, and like you say, making these big stories about something quite small. I love that. And the more you dive into a character, and I don't know where they might have bought it and what they were feeling that day and why they would have been motivated to pick this garment up that you've created. It gets really fun then, and you really start to play with all this background. And when you watch a movie, when you see the performance, you don't necessarily go, oh, that's what happened and that's what those costumers thought. But if you don't do that, and if you just believe that character is the character that we've been thinking in our heads, then we've won. Actually,
it's that amount of in-depth background knowledge and research that goes into making a costume on a body authentic and believable. But then it's this kind of dual pleasure, not just in the imagination and the storytelling, but then in the touch and in the creation and the technical side of things. Quick fire questions. What was the most enjoyable job you've ever done?
Definitely the White Witch of Narnia.
Wow, that was you! Wow, the creator of the White Witch.
Yeah, well, I was part of a team. We had a wonderful pattern maker, and the designer was fantastic. And Tilda Swinton was part of the process as well. She was really interesting and creative, and it was definitely a team. I wouldn't say it was just me, but I was lucky enough to be, and I was quite, I'm not usually like this with jobs, but when it came to felting that dress, it was like, no one gets to touch this. This is my baby. And I was a bit greedy. But it was so exciting. I really loved it. And it was this massive 3D sculpture in felt. And so it was making these pattern pieces, felting sections, and leaving the outside of the felt unfelted. And it was a Nuno felt type technique, so it's quite light. And then you'd felt all these pieces, and then you had to felt the seams together. And then you had to put it on this this big kind of base dress that we had. And then you had to work, I had all these amazing stitchers who would just sit on machines making all this lace. And then we put that on top. Wow. I mean, it was just such an epic job. It was so wonderful to do. And I was sitting there stitching up all that lace onto the top of it, and it was insane, but I absolutely love it, and I'm so proud of it still. And I really, I feel really lucky to have been involved in that process and being with people that were just so interested and excited about it. Like went from dark up to light. There were so many parts of it. We told stories like a mood dress. Every time your mood changed, the colour changed. Wow. So it was a really fun project. Yeah. Okay.
What was the weirdest job you've ever worked
on? It was 30 Days of Night, and it was a horror movie about some.
Your voice is like stripped. It was a horror movie.
It was a horror movie. And I'm not very good with horror movies generally.
And you did the horror.
I didn't do anything for this. Thank God. It was the days before. It was when I was properly a textile artist, and because as a textile artist, you're a colourist as well. You have to match colour all the time. Yeah. And then I ended up having to. They were kind of struggling with the blood colour. They'd do these things and the blood would come out from the special effects department. I was like, it doesn't even look like blood. And we had to go back and so I had to work, I had to work to get the right blood colour. And then it was to get how it looked, you had to flick. And I used my fingers like this quite a lot because I was just constantly wanting to get that kind of splatter effect. And I did it so much that I sprained my finger and had to go to the doctor. And then in New Zealand, you have to say why. You have to do an accident compensation form. So you had to say, if you had an accident, why you had the accident. And then I had to say, because I was flicking blood. And this is such a weird thing. And then I was,
Sorry,
really
doctor,
weird.
I sprained my finger flicking blood on some actors.
It was overuse doing this.
Repetitive strain injury to
another
level.
Yeah, it was just so embarrassing. So the whole thing was weird, and just spending day after day looking at different reds, brown reds, red reds, which red was the blood red. Yeah, it was a bit strange.
What is your favourite thing to knit now? Technique or object?
Oh, lace. I just like lace knitting. I don't know what it is. not with really fine yarns. I generally like them to be a bit heavier, but I just love the yarn and the two together, the patterns. Then when you do, major knit 7 togethers, I just love the play of lace. I don't know, it's my thing.
Do you have a different favourite on the machine and in hand knit?
Oh yeah, the machine, it's definitely colour work. It's just too much fun. And I love my little punch cards. I think they're great.
Yeah, I love your punch cards too. I think this is going to be the start of a new rabbit hole for me to fall down.
Yeah, it's dangerous. So
that you can take over the world by knitting everybody up into a bodysuit, and then you won't have to flip blood at them because they'll just be stuck.
That sounds like a great story. Quite mental, but great.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me over here in your studio. I've thoroughly enjoyed this studio visit and nosing around and seeing a little bit about your technique and hearing much more about your process. So thank you.
No, thank you for coming. It's been great.